without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Again, send those questions along during the webinar. We'll get to as many as we can. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Great, thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. I know we've got folks on the West Coast joining us and folks out here on the East Coast. I'm looking forward to talking with you briefly about an approach that we recommend and that our team uses to talking to your customers about different types of solutions and the art of selling, as you can see in the title here. We can speed through my bio. Hopefully people know me, but if not, it's not that interesting. That's not what they're here for anyways, Brian. So let's start with talking just to level set for all attendees on some of the terminology that we're going to use. I'll talk about on-premise and cloud-based solutions and a hybrid of the two as well, and about how to talk to your clients about that. But first, just to level set on the terms, I think everybody is very familiar with the term cloud. In this case, in this presentation, we're talking about cloud-based backups as backups that are either going to private servers in the cloud or to public servers, but basically you sending your backup up to the cloud. So when we're talking about cloud-based backups, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about on-premise backups, what we're talking about is actually doing backups to a local piece of hardware or storage device, something that can be kept on site, or where you can do a fast backup and then maybe send that piece of hardware, or even tape in some cases off-site as well. That would be an on-premise solution. And today we'll also talk about hybrid solutions. A hybrid solution is one that incorporates both on-premise and cloud-based backup as a combined solution for the customer. And there's a reason why we're talking about that today, because we have just released to our partner community the ability to sell a brand new appliance, which is called the E2 appliance. For those of you who have not heard about it yet, I encourage you to go to our website and dig in and learn a little bit more about that. We've got videos and online demos and lots of great content for you on that. I won't be focusing on pitching the E2 today, but it's a fantastic product that combines the power of the technology that we recently acquired from eVault with the simplicity of installation and management that you know from Carbonite. And I think helping you to talk to your customers about the different options that have available to them is really the point of this particular presentation. So, to me, the art of selling is really about working with your client to understand what their needs and priorities are, and then applying the knowledge that you have about different technologies and solutions that match what those needs and priorities are for the customer. I'm not a big fan of hardcore, in-your-face selling features and benefits and speeds and feeds. I think most customers today want to know that they're talking to someone who understands their specific needs, who listens to them, and who is in the position to advise them on the best course of action. And in the course of being a good consultant and advisor to your customer, you're actually selling them on the solution. And you can get them to participate in defining the solution with you if you used a question-based approach. So that's what we'll talk about today, is what some of those questions and guidelines are for helping to advise your customers on cloud and on-premise and hybrid solutions. First of all, just to baseline the conversation in terms of your recommendations to the customer, and you can fold this in at any point in your conversation with them, but the really important thing that's just a foundational concept from our perspective is that customers should follow what we call the 3-2-2 rule, and that is they should have 3 copies of their data in at least 2 different storage formats and at least 2 different locations. And that could be on-site and off-site, and that's where a hybrid solution comes into play. But this is really important because of all the different factors that can cause data loss. If you don't have this type of an approach where you've got different formats and different locations, then you really are at risk in certain scenarios of losing data, even if you're backing it up. So foundational concept, fold this in wherever appropriate in the conversations that you're having with your customer, but we find many SMBs today aren't necessarily following this basic foundational rule, and that's where they can get into trouble. They thought they have it covered and they didn't. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about the questions and the guidance that you can provide your customer. You can get into more details. These are really 5 different questions or lines of of discussion that you can have with the customer, and I encourage you to drill down as you uncover things, depending on what their answer is. Drill down with follow-on questions to these main questions. But I think this gives you a good framework to start with for your customers. First of all, what's their tolerance for downtime? The fundamental question here is, can you continue to operate your business if you have loss of access, at least temporarily, to your data and your systems? And the answer to this question really is different for different businesses. If you're the florist down the street and you're running the florist shop in downtown Crossing here in Boston, which is where we're located, you might be able to have a system go down and continue to do your business as people are stopping by, buying flowers on the way home or whatever it is, because you could take cash, you could write receipts on paper, you may have a paper receipt book, and you could keep track of your sales on a notebook on the side and catch up with what you sold today later in terms of your accounting. So that's an example of where, yeah, I can tolerate downtime in my day-to-day business. Now, I wouldn't want to run that florist shop for weeks on end and not be able to get back to keeping track of things and recording things, etc. But I could certainly operate that way for a few days. Conversely, another example is the local accountant shop down the street. If we're in the middle of tax season and they lose access to their database or to their software that helps them prepare tax returns for their clients, that's a total, they have almost zero tolerance for that. That's a total stop to their business. The clock on the wall stops spinning, and what's even worse is they run the risk of running over deadlines if they can't prepare the tax returns in time, and actually losing customers in the long term. So in that scenario, you got to get up and back and running on your system as soon as possible so you can continue to do your job and get those tax returns filed for your customers as soon as possible. Zero tolerance for downtime. Now you can drill down in more detail by asking them, well, how quickly do you need to get your data recovered? You have low tolerance or high tolerance for downtime based on your business, but how much does it cost you per hour if you're down? What happens when you're down? Maybe is a more fundamental question. And you can ask the florist will say, well, you know, I'm going to continue to do stuff, but I may not be able to handle as many customers as quickly because I'm writing things down. And when there gets to be a bit of a line at the floral shop, I notice people will walk away. They'll see there's a line and they'll keep walking down the street, and maybe they'll go to one of my competitors. So there is a cost, but I can continue to operate my business. And so that varies depending on the business that you're dealing with. The short answer is the higher speed, that is to say, the bigger the impact, and therefore the faster they need to get up and running, the more you need to start looking at on-premise solutions or a hybrid approach. Because while cloud-based solutions are great in terms of their cost and their reliability and the ease of using them, what they're not necessarily good at is recovering a large amount of data instantaneously. And that's where on-premise solutions can come into play, or hybrid solutions can come into play. There are reasons why hybrid's not good conversely, on-premise is not good conversely, like if you have a fire or a flood or something like that, and the only backup you have is on-site, well, then you got a problem because you still lost your data. And that's where a hybrid solution that's got the combination of both tends to give you the safest, best approach. And that's where we go back to the 3-2-2 rule. But to continue on with the questioning, how quickly they need to be able to recover, and you can ask some follow-on questions about why and what is quick to you and what are the different scenarios. Are we talking about recovering files, or are we talking about rebuilding systems? And there are some nuances there, but that can really help you in terms of steering them in the right direction. Another question you need to ask them is, how long do you need to retain your data? Different people have different retention requirements. Most businesses need to be able to store at least a year's worth of data, and they may want to offload or archive certain things as well, and that comes into play. But the bottom line is devices, computers, that is to say PCs and laptops and the like, come and go, but usually companies want to maintain data over that period, and that's something that's helpful to know about when you're looking at different solutions for your customer, whether they're on-prem or cloud-based. And really, this helps you drill into what's their strategy, what's their process for retaining data. Yes, you've got it backed up, but do you have a thoughtful process and a policy around retention? And in some cases, by asking them a further question, which is what compliance requirements do you have, you can help them understand, and you can uncover where they may be overlooking something. I might not be a hospital, but I might fall under HIPAA, for example, in terms of compliance, or PCI, depending on the business that I'm running, and different regulatory compliance standards are in place for different types of businesses. Using HIPAA as an example, if you don't have backup plans and a process in place, you can be subject to hefty fines. Even if you don't have a data outage event, you can put yourself at risk. And so digging into this and asking them, well, I have other clients that are similar to your business and they're grappling with X, Y, and Z. What have you guys done there? Again, helps to guide them on what their policy, their process is, and of course, the underlying solution and the technology that's going to support that. And that'll draw out different requirements, which may help to dictate different approaches, whether it's cloud, on-prem, or hybrid. Last but not least, for small businesses, probably one of the second most critical questions that comes up is who's going to be managing the backup? It's not just about the process, but who actually does it? Because what we find is a lot of small and medium businesses, for them, total cost of ownership, the amount of care and feeding they need to put into the solution is really important. Because if they have a manual backup approach, for example, like they're putting stuff on an external hard drive or they're storing it in the cloud, but they don't have an automated way to do that, chances are one of two things happen. Either they're spending a lot of time doing it, or they're not doing a good job of doing backups because it's like, oh yeah, I have to remember to do that. I've got something in my calendar to do it, once a month type of thing. And guess what? Those things get forgotten. And if they're doing it all the time, there's a lot of cost associated with manually doing that. So what's their process? Who's doing it? How much technical skills and experience or aptitude does the people or does the person who does the backup have? And that can help you as well, getting into, oh, geez, you're right. The process we have right now is not fail-safe, and I spend a lot of time doing it, can help you to steer them towards a better solution. Well, wouldn't it be great if we could automate this and that it was such that it was running all the time on a regular schedule, not impacting you at all, very reliable. You could know exactly if something's working or not working. And you could get on to more important things. Well, that would be great, Brian. I'd love to do that. So asking who's going to be managing it and drilling into how much the current solution or approach that they're using has from a cost perspective also can help you in terms of steering them towards the appropriate solution. I'm going to bring all these around to cloud-based and hybrid approaches in just a minute. But I think the other really important thing you can do is to help your customer really figure out what the cost of downtime is. And the reason for this is a lot of times when we look at different surveys and we talk to our customers, we see that the vast majority, in fact, in this case, latest numbers are 80% of SMBs have felt the pain of downtime due to data loss, and they have lower and lower tolerances. As time goes on and things become more and more about doing transactions with your smartphone or having things immediately available on your line for your clients, our tolerance for any outages or downtime just keeps getting lower and lower. And there are almost any business you can think of. In fact, 28 million SMBs in the U.S. alone have a need for a solution. So I think it's a great opportunity for you to go out there and work with every single one of your customers to make sure that they've got the right approach. And as you talk to them about the cost of downtime, we've got a few yardsticks here in terms of specific examples. This happens to be data from IDC that says for SMBs, the total cost per downtime event ranges from approximately $82,000 up to over $250,000. That's a big cost. So as a starting point, this is a big potential problem for customers. And as I talked about on the prior slide, most SMBs have felt this pain in some way, shape, or form at some time, and it is not that uncommon that it occurs. And so you can go through a very simple exercise in a conversation with somebody and say, look, let's try to put a reasonable cost on this, or even better, what would be the appropriate amount of insurance you should have against this type of event from occurring? And that could very simply be, well, you told me earlier in the conversation, because you're an accountancy, if you have any downtime, you're losing approximately $500 per hour. Let's talk about that cost. What's the chance that it could occur, and how long you would be down for if it did occur? And if you take those three things together and multiply them, you really have a probability-weighted cost. So $500 an hour, you're going to guess that you've got a 5% chance of that happening over the course of a year. And usually when it happens, you're going to be down for several hours given your backup approach. It's going to take you 6 to 12 hours to reconstitute the system. Well, you can run the math on that very quickly and figure out that that's a large dollar figure. And then you counter that to, well, geez, if we could put some insurance in place that maybe cost you $100 a month against something that might cost you $100,000 a year if it were to occur, that's pretty cheap insurance, isn't it? Well, yeah, actually, now that you're mentioning it, that really helps me to frame why I'm doing this. And we have a habit of thinking about some events as being highly probable and costly and ignoring others, and this is one we simply can't afford to have our customers ignore any longer. So there are plenty of different ways of going through that calculation. I was just illustrating a basic approach. But by sitting down and talking to your customer about what happens and how much cost is it, and how often do you think that might occur? It might only be 5% chance a year, but we can run the math on that and see very quickly that the numbers add up to be a very significant amount. If you were at the low end of the scale, $82,000 per event, and you only had a 3% chance of that occurring in any given year, which is really low, it still would be a $2,500 cost to you on a probability-weighted basis. So very simply, $100 a month on that basis seems like pretty good insurance to me. So that's important to drill down on the questioning and what you're leading your customers through. Let's talk about the value of on-premise solutions and hardware as a service more specifically. If you're getting through the conversation and you're finding that, yeah, people need to be able to recover quickly and have something on-site that they can, for example, quickly rebuild a server or rebuild a database and have quick access to data should it go down, then certainly, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to be looking at a hardware-based on-premise or hybrid solution. And that's where you may want to look at hardware as a service. There are a lot of advantages, and this is something that is a great option for most small businesses, because when you do hardware as a service, you have reduced capital expenses, meaning you don't have to spend a lot of money up front to buy a big piece of iron to put in and then build that and install it, etc. With most hardware as a service options, including ones that Carbonite now offers, you have lower upfront costs, it becomes an operating expense, and it's a very predictable fixed annual budgeting cost for you. So that's first of all on the expense side. Second side is repair, replacement of that hardware, depreciation, making sure it stays up to date with the latest patches and versions of the software, etc. All is no longer your responsibility. That's the responsibility of the vendor. And for a lot of SMBs, back to the questioning about who's going to manage this and what's the total cost of ownership, that's a big advantage. And then third is that maintenance becomes something that the vendor is responsible for as well. You never have to worry about repairs and upgrades. The simple analogy I like to use is it's like having cable TV service. If you get your cable box from the cable company and something goes wrong with that cable box, what do? You pick up the phone, and they have a new one to you usually in 24 to 48 hours, and you don't have to deal with anything. There's no cost to you. There's no calling somebody to come fix it, etc. And it's the same approach with hardware as a service. And most providers will actually give you service level agreements, especially when it comes to backup, that tell you exactly what you can expect in terms of your coverage and the warranty, etc. And so you've got a really good turnkey approach when you take a hardware as a service model. Now, that leads me, last but not least, to what's Carbonite offering today. I mentioned that we recently introduced the E2 appliance. We haven't even launched this in the market yet. That is to say, we haven't gone out and started marketing it and made big announcements. We've shared it only with our partner community. On November 1st, we are going to launch it, and there's going to be plenty of fanfare and a lot of activity around it. Right now is the period in which our partners are getting oriented to the new E2 appliance and the new line of appliances that you'll see in the future from Carbonite. And so I want to give you a little bit more about that. First of all, you all know, or hopefully you all know, about the Carbonite Office Suite, and these are the solutions that we've had around for some time that basically allow you to back up data and applications and whole systems for PCs and servers using software that Carbonite provides along with a service. And that can be, in the case of Carbonite Server Backup, can be on-prem, cloud, that's your option. And for our endpoint solutions is a cloud-based solution. So those are things you're very familiar with, I think, today that provide great solutions. But as we introduce the E2, and in the future, in Q1, other appliances with a similar experience, what we've really got is hardware as a service and a hybrid backup and recovery approach. This is really something that allows us to handle very diverse IT environments, so it doesn't matter what type of operating system you're running or what degree of virtualization you have, et cetera. We've got a lot more flexibility in this package. But more importantly, for small businesses that are looking to protect, in the case of the E2, anywhere from 250 gigs to a terabyte worth of data, this is a turnkey solution. You can literally order this for your client, get it sent out. All they have to do is plug it in. You can set it up for them remotely, and it gives them a completely automated solution where there's almost zero care and feeding that they need to do. In fact, they can have you do any care and feeding that's needed to set it up and to run it. And it has all the advantages of hardware as a service that we just talked about a minute ago. So it's a great option for folks, and as I'm alluding to, in the future, we will see other Carbonite appliances that have a similar ease of deployment and configuration and management that scale all the way up to virtually any size business, really, that you'd want to use it for. So that's a quick overview in terms of what we're doing with the E2, et cetera. One more mention specifically for you and your business. We are running a Backend Rebate program right now in the E2. This is running started running earlier in the month and is running through the end of the year. And it really offers some in addition to the attractive discounts that we offer to our partners, we've got this Backend Rebate that really makes it I think very lucrative for you to go out and talk to your customers about this type of solution. And I'd be remiss and I'd be in trouble with folks like Brian if I didn't mention this rebate program. But just to wrap up, hopefully that gives you a good sense of how to frame the conversation and use a question-based discovery approach to begin first by understanding what your customers' needs are, helping them think about what they need by asking questions and coming up with the answers themselves, and then you being able to apply your knowledge about different solutions to offer them the right fit, the right solution for their environment that balances their needs in terms of recovery time and what they're backing up and costs and ease of management all in one consultation or one clean package. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I'm going to wrap up the presentation now, and we're going to go to any questions and or comments that you folks may have.